On the television show Frasier, the people are presented with two separate but unequally problematic kinds of episodes. Those that do not hold up, and those that are timelessly repugnant. This is the second kind.
Let's get loosey-goosey. Guys, have you read any good books lately? Are there any hot literary books that are lighting up the charts?
Well, I mean,
This is a reference to the episode that we're going to talk about.
Wait. Oh, yeah, I read this one called Call Me By Your Name, Frasier Crane, that is. Call Me Frasier Crane. Dr. Frasier Crane's in a sex book. Frasier Season 2, Episode 1, Slow Tango in Seattle.
South Seattle.
Is
that even a thing?
I don't think it's a thing. It sounds like not a thing.
It's,
I think it's just called, Tacoma.
Yeah. I think that was just clever alliteration on the part of the people who wrote the episode, because they wrote this episode in fucking Los Angeles or New York, and they don't really know anything about Seattle, probably.
So I had a question going through my little baby mind this this whole episode, and it was revealed, which was, how old was Frasier
when this happened?
And then the other question was, how old was the lady? The answer is she was 40. He was 17. At least at the end of the relationship.
Yeah.
This is an episode.
Yeah, we should probably say more of what the plot is.
Yes.
And then we can get into everything wrong with it.
So let's set the scene.
So Elaine Bennis's boss.
Oh yeah.
No, start at the beginning.
That's the beginning, isn't it? Has written a book.
No, the beginning is Roz is reading a book while Frasier is trying to do a show.
Yes.
And she's like ignoring the calls. And the book is thought to be this really engrossing piece of popular literature that's very steamy and romantic. I have a lot of thoughts about how this episode frames literature and like the popular imagination of literature, specifically the way women consume literature, because it's very different than what we would consider popular women's consumption today. So the book she's reading is a book called Slow Tango in South Seattle by a guy who's played by Jay Peterman from Seinfeld, John O'Hurley.
He gives a great performance.
He's great in like the 2 or 3 minutes that he's in it.
Now he's set up as a person who hung out at Cheers.
Cheers!
Was he on Cheers? Was that a real?
No, he was not on Cheers.
This was a made-up thing.
Yeah, this was something that was made up by the show. So the show sort of says that, he was a regular at Cheers who talked to Frasier all the time, and Frasier, over drinks, would sort of talk to this guy about his life. And the guy, this author, played by Jay Peterman from Seinfeld, wrote a book called Slow Tango in South Seattle, which is about the story of how Frasier lost his virginity at 17, probably 16, to a 40-year-old piano teacher. And consequently, the rest of this episode is a big joke about how Frasier was sexually assaulted as a child.
Yeah,
including like perhaps the worst part of the episode was when they're in Frasier's apartment with Niles and Martin, and it's first revealed that the story was lifted from Frasier's real life experience, and the reactions of Niles and in particular Martin are
horrifying.
Boy, this really fries me. You know, that woman taking advantage of my kid. Not to mention I was putting out $10 a week for piano lessons so you could get your heads trimmed.
Wait a minute. We're not talking about Miss Warner.
Don't tell me this was going on during your lessons, too.
No, you'll be relieved to know that while Frasier was getting his Rachmaninoffs, I was actually studying music.
A similar joke is at the end when he's talking about how he's feels bad about how he left things, and she feels bad that she didn't teach him enough because they were she was
fucking,
assaulting him.
They were fucking.
Yeah,
and it was raping him.
And Martin is like, says to Niles like, did this happen with you as well?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the real question. In a completely different emotional spirit would be the real question. Were you also victimized?
Yeah. And so there's a moment in this episode that is like the only true moment that I could suss out, which is Martin suddenly is concerned because Niles is the younger brother. So Niles would have been like, what, 13 or something?
Yeah.
So when it's implied that something happened with Niles, he's like, oh, this wasn't going on when you were a student, was it? Like, that's the only true moment of, like, a guy like Martin would want to fucking blow this woman's head off.
Yeah, and okay, so there's, I think, 2 layers to this onion of being problematic. One is perhaps, I don't know, like an archaic standard with these things, just in reference to Call Me By Your Name earlier, although this age gap is much more alarming.
Yeah.
And the other is the double standard.
Oh, 100%. This is purely an artifact of the time. South Park has a great episode that's very similar of a female teacher and one of her students, and the joke of the episode is like cops will hear.
The student's like a 4-year-old.
Yeah, and the cops will hear it and say nice.
Yeah,
and that's truly how it was viewed.
Or even, well, no, I'm not sure that's changed because a pretty recent SNL sketch involving Pete Davidson, which tells you how recent it is a dramatization of a high school student who's sleeping with his teacher. Which is the same age gap here. And the bit is that the judge, played by Kenan Thompson, instructs the stenographer to specifically write down that he says, "My man," specifically like that. So there's still this really disturbing double standard with these things because obviously swap the genders and it's pretty universally abhorrent. And well, or at least we think so now. Maybe again back then, sort of a age of consent laws aside, a illegally January September relationship may have been less abhorrent, even if it were the genders reversed.
So I have some thoughts about that. So this episode is very much in keeping with what was then sort of a waning but still popular genre of literary fiction, which was a young man, usually like between like 14 and 17, discovers himself sexually with an older woman. Like that was a pretty prominent like white dude writes Bildungsroman literature thing. And it was never understood in the context that we should understand it in. It's the way we probably do understand it now, which is that is a traumatic experience. That is not a growing experience. That is an assault. But like, you know, it's very like sort of Philip Roth light or John Irving light kind of a thing. And they don't write books quite like that nowadays. But the way the episode frames it is that the books that were being published of that nature were sort of women's books. Whereas now, like, women's fiction trends are like 50 Shades of Grey or crazy romance genre shit like that. But like this sort of slightly steamy Bildungsroman is framed as being very appealing to Daphne and Roz. And it was in keeping with books that would have topped the New York Times bestseller list at the time, but it's fucked up.
Yeah, it's really messed up. And the problem is, like, once you accept that, you accept the premise that this is somehow not something people should be alarmed about and Frasier should feel, you know, traumatized by, then you move on to the preposterous plot beyond that, past the acceptance of that, which is that he somehow messed up by ending their tryst. Because he had to finish high school and go to college.
Go to college like a child becoming an adult.
Yeah. Oh God.
And Daphne, even after reading the end of the book, as he's simultaneously reading it, comes in and slaps him for it. I mean,
like he was the wrong one.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God. I have to say this as a side thing. Within this episode, one of the darkest jokes I've ever seen, at least on Frasier, Bulldog is discussing how he had a similar thing when he was 16 years old.
Look, I had a similar experience when I was 16 with an older woman who introduced me to the mysteries of love. Of course, she was a hooker. Hey, it was a birthday present from my dad, okay? You want to know the ironic thing, Doc? All I wanted was a bike.
with a
prostitute.
With a prostitute that his father had gotten him. And the funny thing is that I actually only wanted a bike.
And his voice cracks as he says it,
and it is so fucking dark.
Dark and terrible and horrifying. Why is that a joke? Season 2 of Frasier Writer's Room?
See, so much of this I could totally see in a different way. I guess maybe in a modern way. If Frasier was made today, in the new age of dramedy, that these are great moments of character building if they handled it in any sort of way. But there was no intention of handling the subject matter. This is just a joke.
No, it was just a joke.
just a punchline.
Yeah.
It was literally just a joke.
Now, speaking of jokes, though, there are a couple of things that
There are a couple of good ones. I will say, this is a show that is excellent craftsmanship.
Yeah.
There are good jokes in here.
Hey, Nazi uniforms were very sharp.
When he's talking to Jay Peterman, and Jay Peterman reveals on the radio that he got the inspiration from God.
One thing I must ask you, what was your inspiration for this poignant love story?
Oh, quiet. It's his last chance.
Well, Amber, it was actually given to me by God.
By God! Do you believe this guy's grandiosity? I'm God, and he knows it.
I am God!
Funny.
And the piano teacher's mother...
Oh, that was a good sequence.
At the end, it's a miscommunication. He thinks that she is the piano teacher.
The significantly older woman.
And he's telling her their backstory, and she's, I don't remember that.
I remember.
But she's, okay.
Dear, this is Frasier Crane. Apparently we were quite an item one.
And so at the very end of the episode, the final bump is that the actual piano teacher comes in, and she's a
sexy Golden Girls,
Golden Girl, pre-cougar.
And Frasier is still fucking pitching a tent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
God damn it.
Her partner or whoever she's dating comes in and leaves with her.
25 years old.
Yeah, this guy who's like 25 if he's a day, and the lady, the big punchline is,
Are you and he?
Uh-huh. I wasn't interested in 40-year-old men then, and I guess I'm still not.
oh, so you're still a predator.
So you're still a rapist.
Yeah.
Yeah, just let's I think we're at a point now where we don't need to use the rhetorical tool of reverse the genders, but for the sake of just being appalled.
Yeah.
I imagine that shit trying to fly.
Now, throughout this whole episode, it's a travesty. It's vile. However, Kelsey Grammer's I felt sympathy for him the whole time, even though through his performance, I could see, yes, he's
wonderful in this episode.
Yeah, and you feel sympathy for him, even if the show doesn't.
Yeah, I guess in the mad world that he's living in with his characters, and I guess the real mad world we were living in where this show aired, he was reacting in a very human way. I don't think he had any reactions that you could pin on him as being problematic or inappropriate, given, the input he had from the world, like his father cracking wise about it, and his coworkers all knowing about it, and it being the subject of a best-selling novel, and his employee slapping him in the face for it.
Now, here's the thing. During the course of the show, there have been a few episodes that I misremembered. This episode I misremembered as having a darker ending, but also one that would have been more felt better in context of making it as vile as it actually is. That he thought the thing they had was special, and it is revealed that she did it that with like all of her students. Yeah. That's how I remembered the episode.
It was not that, but like that would be worse.
Yeah,
it was similarly flipped though.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was like
it was clearly not this big emotional thing.
It was like the joke you referenced. I didn't like 40-year-old men then, and I don't now, which means Frasier Crane was not the only one.
Yeah, her taste was pedophilic. And let's not forget that just last season we had a role reversal, except with like what she was 22, 23.
Yeah,
with the shop girl.
And there's another one coming like 6 years from now with Zooey Deschanel.
I forgot about that one. But I don't remember the Zooey Deschanel episode, but I know the one last season it was decided that it would be inappropriate and wrong.
Yeah.
For a 40-year-old to date like a 23-year-old.
Yeah.
There was a whole episode about how that's creepy and weird.
Yeah, in the context of the show, they're even wrong.
So in a way, the show is enforcing its own double standard logic.
Yeah.
And like, what I can't get over is he goes to the house and he wants to ask her out on a goddamn date. He's still pitching a tent. He's still horny for this lady who traumatized him as a child.
I mean, they say, well, art is whatever you take it. So you can make an assumption that the writers were saying that he was a nerdy loser. But they kind of reference it where, in the coded language of metaphor, they say he slept with this woman and then he didn't sleep with anyone else for 6.5 more years. And we're supposed to laugh like
yeah.
But in reality, that could be easily
that's trauma.
Just, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe he had some hang-ups around sex from
being raped as a child.
Welcome back to Frasier. Season 2 started off strong.
How was your summer, everyone?
I will say season 2 gets better.
There's only up to go from here. Yeah.
Is this the worst episode so far?
In terms of this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, 1,000,000,000%.
Yeah.
Nothing comes close.
I hated this episode forever. It always made me uncomfortable, and it was just bad. And even like amid there being like good jokes, like well-written jokes and good performances, the whole thing is just bad. Like there are some funny like one-liners of like Martin saying,
"So this whole book's about the night you conceived Frederick."
Very amusing, Dad. I'm happy to know that was not my first time.
Hey, I'm happy to know it wasn't your only time.
Pretty funny, like one-liners.
Even the jocular nature of this riffing when it's a father and a son, it's just, I don't know. I find it all a bit.
You were raped as a teenager. Let me make a joke about how you didn't lose your virginity until you were 35. I'm the Frasier Crane head writer, whatever.
Yeah, this one, the characters I feel are very ill used by the writers in this episode.
I have to say, there is a Niles Daphne moment
where he goes cross-eyed and gets
cross-eyed and fucking gets horny.
But it is the phase 2 version of that. I think where
Daphne has straight hair instead of curly.
where he is reacting to a thing but not engaging with it. You know what I mean? Whereas before, do you get what I mean? It seemed a little better, is what I'm trying to say.
I think it is better, and I think it's better generally from this point on.
Well, they fucking have to be to make up for this fucking episode.
Yeah, no, it's better from this point on, and like it doesn't go to the lows of the RV episode.
Yeah, true.
He's filming her sleep.
Do you know what show was on much earlier than this show and had a not perfect but more nuanced understanding of sexual assault in all of its varied forms?
Soap.
Oh, I was going to say Space. The Final Frontier.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, no, that was equally bad. the Deanna Troi sex assault episode is terrible.
But they call it rape at the end.
They do. They do. That's still a bad episode.
But they don't call it rape when the space ghost comes and impregnates her. Season 2, episode 1.
Hey, maybe that's a thing. Is that like a secret thing amongst the writers' rooms of American television that season 2, episode 1
is the
that's your big fuck up episode.
We'll talk about that episode of Star Trek eventually at some point. The Child.
Yeah,
because it's terrible.
Jesus.
The first episode where Whoopi Goldberg appears, so it's
God, yeah. Poor Whoopi. I love Whoopi.
She's great on TNG generally.
Well, both of these shows are substantially less problematic than
Justin.
Yes?
Do it one more time for me. Do the Tim Allen. More power, more power.
I don't think so, Frank.
Wilson, who's Wilson?
We're all Wilson.
Justin is Tim the Toolman Taylor.
I
No,
guess
that's not Tim the Toolman Taylor. Wait, is it?
Yeah,
What?
it is. Yeah, of course it is.
No, who's Richard Kind?
Who's Al Borland?
Al Borland.
Yeah, Al Borland. Yeah, Justin is Al Borland.
I'll take that. He's a lovely man.
Oh,
he's been in nothing.
Justin, your mother is obese and terrible. You're also an incompetent fool, and I think you look terrible, and everyone hates you.
I'm in touch with my emotions.
Justin, more power, more power. I'm worried that my son, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, is a gay boy because he's goth. That was an episode of Home Improvement that we let air on television, America.
Hey,
God,
America, you're canceled.
America, you're canceled. You let Tim Allen be a thing.
He's still a thing. They still have that show Last Man Standing. That fucking
got canceled.
Dog whistle. Yeah. It's just Tool Time over again, except pro-Trump. No, it got moved to Fox. It got moved to a bigger network.
Hey, Fox, you're canceled.
Fox News, you're canceled, son.
We're doing great,
God
guys.
damn it, we're all going to die. Who cares? The world is ending. The species is going extinct. Giraffes are on the endangered species list. We're all going to die. Biodiversity is ending. Enjoy fighting over resources and water over the next 10 years. Enjoy relocating from the coasts to a central part of North America.
3 hours later. Okay.
Oh, the hilarious anecdote. Thank you for sharing that. Hey, Tom.
Yes?
Do you have any news on your life?
Yes, I certainly do.
Whoa.
What?
So I tendered my resignation at a little place called Glarns and Global.
Hey!
Thank you.
Congratulations. Did you tender that resignation recently?
I did. In fact,
to whom?
To the new manager, man.
Oh, okay. To a new guy who I don't know.
Exactly.
We called him out on here before. Hey, Paul.
A pathetic subhuman who was convinced that he was a creative person.
Hey, guy I never met. You're probably fine. Fuck you.
Yeah, I gotta say, I didn't have too much of a chance to work.
It's so funny to me that Justin worked for that store for a really long time, and there was a new store manager that they hired that he never met and then quit. For like 6 months he was there, right?
No, it was only like at most 2 months or month and a half.
The thing is, like, I didn't work with the guy a lot, but from talking to other people, he seems pretty solid. He seems like an all right guy. Also, I'm quitting right as the company is going through a transformation. It's got new owners. It's being taken off the market.
Yeah, they were brought up by private equity.
So who knows? Maybe they're gonna like up the minimum wage to 16 and like start having. No, it's gonna be an environmentally wasteful shitstorm of knickknacks and cultural decay.
Yeah, vulture capitalism does not work that way. Private equity buys up dying retailers and saddles them with more debt, and then reaps some profit and forces them to go bankrupt and close.
So it was time to go. It was just, I had a rough shift, and being 30 years old and doing that. So, I still have my other job where I get most of my income, but it's not a complete livable income. But, I'll be all right, and change begets change. And I guess I'm thinking of this as a catalyst. And I'm going to have to do something to at least occupy my time more fully. But hopefully that something will beget more change and shake things loose, and hopefully I'll we'll see what happens. It's really disappointing to see within a large institution how little regard is given institutionally to the well-being and welfare of employees, and not a lot can happen to you when you work in a bookstore. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of injuries you can receive, although I did have my leg cut by a razor-sharp rusty table and had to get a tetanus shot, which I was not compensated for.
Oh, I remember that.
With blood on my pants for the rest of the day. But not a lot can happen to you. But even in that rather innocuous work environment, the amount of the amount, disrespect, but also just minimalization of real concrete threats and abuse from the public,
and humanity,
and employees of that same organization, and how insufficient action was taken that put people's well-being at risk. It's really disheartening in the for-profit sector, and I'm sure these things permeate most institutions, public, private, or otherwise. But when you're working retail, man, you are nothing.
No, yeah, like having a public sector job now has really taught me how much more you are valued as a person.
Absolutely.
In the public sector than you are in the private sector. Like, they treat you like a human being, and they treat you like you have worth. And you don't get that when you're working in a for-profit institution.
See,
a publicly traded for-profit institution is not publicly traded anymore because they were bought up, but still.
I worked in a public-private sandwich. I had a public sector job beforehand, so it was quite a learning curve in the come down to that, shitty, disrespectful corporate culture, and then I've escaped back into the public sector, and you hit it on the head. That's the key difference. You're thought of as a person, as a human being. And I'm sure that is also the case in, I don't know, less working poor class type private jobs, when they have to be concerned about lawsuits more. But yeah, it's amazing. It's like the Palo Alto experiment. People just fall into roles, and it doesn't matter what you're actually like. People just, you're the retail scum, and they're the class trader management who are paid a slightly larger pittance to turn around and whip their underlings.
They're paid 20 cents more, on the dollar, and they own you. And even the fucking upper level management, they're paid what?
Yeah, not that much.
$6 more probably.
Anyway, I'll see you all at the Amazon warehouse.
And this is a big moment.
See you in hell.
Here, it's a big moment in Plaid Lads. Time to reveal the place that we used to work for. It was Barnes and Noble
booksellers.
Booksellers. It's a big bomb I just dropped on you. Barnes and Noble.
So literally, we started the show where back in literally 12 months ago, we did our first test show.
Yeah. Do we
in
still
July
have that?
last
Can we
year.
release that?
That's got to be somewhere.
Look for it.
And that was a lost show because it was garbage.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we were all working at the same Barnes & Noble at the same time. A month later, I got fired. And then I would like to think that a Spartacus-like chain started. And
we all left. Yeah. Justin, and then shout out to Lindsay.
Shout out to Lindsay. She left earlier. Lindsay, we're going to have you on the show. I promise.
Folks, there's no such thing as Lindsay. Follow the Plaid Lads on Twitter and Instagram at PlaidLadsPod. Follow Justin Tutora on Instagram at welcome_to_Wonderfalls and at Some Things That Made Me Cry. Follow Tom, me, my music, elbowwake.bandcamp.com, at elbowwakemusic on Instagram. Rate and review us on iTunes, please. If you give us 5 stars, we'll read it on the air. You can say anything you want about us, we'll read it anyway. See you next time, folks.